Welcome back to Secret Recaps. Today, I will show you an adventure comedy crime film from 1994 titled Baby's Day Out. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Bennington Austin Cardwell, for better known as Bang, is the son of Lorraine Bennington Austin Cardwell, 3 a.m. couple of socialites that live in a mansion in a suburb of Chicago. The person that spends the most time with him and actually knows him well, however, is his Minnie Gilbertine, a very caring woman that is willing to reading his favorite book Baby's Day Out, or as Bean calls it, over and over even if she's tired of it. Today, I think, is getting his picture taken so he can appear in the social pages of the newspaper since Lorraine has been feeling they have kept their baby hidden from their friends while the mother and then to get the baby ready, the photographers are ready to go as well, but they encounter a problem when a trio of criminals ambushed Eddie, Vico and Norby, grab the real photographers, tie them up and leave them in an old abandoned warehouse before taking their uniforms in their van so that they can pretend to be. When they arrived at the mansion, their actors believe with no issues, so they take out their equipment as if they were going to take the picture for real and asked the mother for some time alone with the child because if she's there she may distract. The Rain looks a bit skeptical and he gets her to leave when he points out her outfit is not adequate for the photograph. The servants leave with her to help her find the right dress, but before doing so Gilbertine gives Eddie the book in case. I think it's difficult with everyone gone. It's incredibly easy for the criminals to steal the baby and escape through the window. Whether one has already been parked, they change vehicles midway though, leaving their disguises with the photographers' uniforms and equipment behind in exchange for their own one. The Rain finds a note left behind telling her not to call the police, and Bennington comes back from work after receiving a note asking for money as well. The cops and the FBI soon arrived at the house and start their investigation, stopping the Rain just in time from going out there and searching for the baby on her own, which could be dangerous. Meanwhile, the criminals are in their secret hideout, the last floor apartment of a tall building with a huge clock on the front. After changing Big get a less flashy clothes so nobody can tell he's a rich baby, Norby takes into the bedroom and reads the book to it, trying to make him take a nap, but he is the one that falls asleep instead. Think looks through the book on his own and notices there are birds outside the window just like the ones in the story, so he crawls out and uses the fire escape to climb to the roof after the birds. When he finds a skylight, he looks through it and sees Eddie and vehicle in the room, gaining their attention. When he spits on them and giggles, the criminals panic and go after him, only to find him crawling on a wooden board to reach the other route, for the bird has flown to and he comes closer to grab him and ends up being hit by the board when the shift of Bang's weight makes it move up and down, and seeing it is dangerous, Vico throws the ball away after Bang makes it to the other side, eliminating the chance for them to follow him through the same path. The trio decides that the roofs are close enough to each other to John. Norby in Vigo managed to cross over. Eddie is still dizzy and falls on an alley dumpster. Meanwhile, I think makes his way inside the building, reaching an apartment and managing to leave it. When the owner opens the door to the male, they are too busy talking to each other to know and crawling around their feet until he reaches the elevator, which she rides to the ground floor before finally leaving the building. Norby in Vigo rescue ready out of the trash again just in time to see Big get on a crowded blue bus because it matches the one in the book, so they hurried to get into their van and follow him around town. The bus driver notices them and drives away from them, losing them for a couple of blocks until the trio manages to find a way back into the mainstream, stopping the van right in front of the bus when it stopped to let a big lady out who carries a bag where Bang has crawled into. North, he talks to the driver and asked about the baby, but the driver just takes off while he called the main office to see if there are any reports of a missing baby. The trio sees the big lady walk behind their van and noticed being comfortably sitting at her back. They start following her, trying to think of a way to take Big without her knowing, but she does notice them and proceeds to drop all things in order to beat them up. Scared of her strength, the criminals run away, while Bang takes the chance to crawl out of the bag and enter a department store. There he's found by the employee in charge of the mole's daycare, we think speak as a skater facilities. She takes him with her and leaves him with the other kids after changing his diaper. But Think escapes again by climbing into another baby stroller when the mother comes to pick her up after drinking all the juice from the other baby's bottle. Bank waits for the stroller to stop and climbs back out, making his way to the doors and waiting for an adult to open, and so he can go outside. On the streets are reporters already covering his kidnapping on the news, and he crawls past her. When he sees a taxi, which also reminds him of his book, he causes the reporter to drop a microphone in. The cameras are on him for a second, and now for the criminals to see him on a shop's television. They rush after him, but they don't make it in time. Bank rolls into the taxi and looks at them through the window as the car drives away. In the meantime, the Wells receive a call from a man claiming to have seen the baby and go check it out. The man points at an apartment after getting some money out of them, but it was of course a lie. It's a random baby belonging to a perfectly good woman. When the taxi parks to drop off its passengers, Bean crawls out and sees this across the street, which also is in his book. The criminals arrive then, having followed the taxi with their van, and see across this read without any issues. They try to do the same, but it's more difficult for three grown men to be ignored by the cars, so the vehicle ends up driving over their toes, causing them to run away in pain and fall into a ditch. After they get out, they enter the zoo and follow Bank's tracks on the dirt that take them to the house, where Bank is contently sitting inside a cage with a gorilla. This girl likes the baby and treats him as if he were its own, feeding and fruits and keeping them safe. It isn't as nice. However, when Vehicle puts his arm inside the cage to try to grabbing, the gorilla just watches him for a few seconds before coming closer and smashing his head with his fist. Their next idea is to use a mop they find nearby. Northeast exits handle inside the cage and puts it through Bank's clothes to pick him up, but the gorilla quickly notices and takes Big back before heading north with them. Afterward, they wait for the A to fall asleep, and now it's City's turn to try to get the baby out. At first it seems he successfully bringing Big closer, but the gorilla wakes up, grabs Eddie and furiously tosses him against another cage after roaring on his face. At that moment, the zoo opens the back of the gorilla's cage so it can be in the outer area for a while, giving them the opportunity to safely escape. While the Cockwells find Bank's picture on the paper, but not in the way they wanted. Big hangs out in the park watching all the other kids play and have fun. He starts crawling away again when the criminals arrive in their van and start following him, almost catching him before he goes through some bushes and a tunnel. Three grown men can't walk into. The trio runs to the other side park and wait for him to come out of the tunnel at the other end, grabbing him right before the police arrive. Playing the innocent bystander card, they sit on a nearby bench and hide Big between Eddie's legs, covering him with his jacket. The cops start asking questions about their van and a missing baby, and then he tries his best to answer them, all screaming in pain because Pink is heading is growing and even lighting it on fire after he finds a lighter in one of Eddie's pockets. Nor B and Vigo take the cops away with them to show them something about the van, while Bank leaves the lighter on the bench and climbs down from his lap, who can't stop him from escaping because he's going through excruciating pain. When his two friends return, they throw him on the ground and put out the fire by stopping repeatedly on his grow. Right back in the house, Lorraine approaches Gilberty, realizing she's the only one that can understand how she feels. While they bond over their love for the baby, Bang is making his way to a construction site, followed closely by Vico. Being sees a worker's down out and wants it for himself, so he climbs on a steel beam to grab it, not caring about the fact he is now being lifted with the beam to the highest floor of the building. Eddie and Norby join Vico, and together the three of them ride the elevator until they reach an area Bean hasn't passed by yet. The idea is to jump on it and retrieve the baby when the beam finally reaches their floor, but the plan doesn't go very well. When Vehicle jumps on the beam, his weight causes it to tip down and Bean to slide off until he lands on the elevator roof. As he crawls inside the building, Eddie in North Beach right help Eco, who's about to lose his grip on the beam. Norby tries to grab him to bring him back inside, but he slips and ends up hanging off the beam with him for a moment before he loses his grip and falls on top of some wooden boards. This movement is enough to get the steel beam a push, and the Eco manages to jump back into the building, landing on top of that. Norby isn't so lucky, though he slips off it, would only to land on another steel beam before falling again and landing inside. About it, what's the matter? Eddie and Vigo try to follow back around while avoiding the workers. The Vehicle does as well as normal does. He tries to jump back on the elevator, but hits his head a couple of times, and his dizziness, he ends up falling off the building and landing in a dumpster. It's up to it now. He comes incredibly close to Bang and is about to catch him, but he slips on some drool the baby has dropped, causing him to fall and hit his head with a hammer. When he tries to get up, he holds onto a hanging rope for support, but pulling it proves a mistake. When it turns over about that showers that he was clipped, this slows down as walking, since he can barely take a step without slipping, and it gives me enough time to crawl away and get onto a moving platform that takes him back down. Desperate, and he sees the moon of a crane and jumps on it, think it will also be lowered to the ground, but at the moment the workers reach the end of their day and leave the site, so when he ends up stuck on the crane watching the sunset, one of the workers sees Big crawl out of the construction site, but the idea is so ridiculous he blames it on his imagination. The criminals give up on the baby and decide to return home. The FBI visits the Cotwells to inform them of all the places where Bang has been seen through the day. Gilbertine immediately puts two and two together and realizes he's following the journey of the book, so the last place he'll visit has to be the old soldiers' home. The family and the cops drive there and effectively find among the elderly who are singing a song for once the family has reunited. They all get back in the car together with the FBI agents, and when they drive through the highway, Big recognizes the building he had been kept it because of the clock outside. He starts pointing at it and calling it blue, which indicates the adults. As Book is there, the FBI turns around, and after calling for reinforcements, they surround the building it and man the criminals to surrender and return the book. And he has no other choice but to toss it in the book through the window before he and his companions put their hands on their heads, waiting to get arrested. When the family returns home, they follow the ending of the book, which consists of putting the baby to bed once his parents are out of sight, because to shells, and chooses his next favorite baby's trip to China. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.